In 2023, a new conference was developed called Women with Metal, conceived and directed by Kirsty Davies-Chinnock, MD of Professional Polishing Services in the West Midlands. On this edition of the production line, we're joined by Kirsty and by two of the 2024 conference speakers, Steph Snade, founder of the Limitless Leadership Academy, and Jeremy Stockdale, founder of Ylead. Hang on to your hats. It's going to be a great conversation. Kirsty, tell us please how you got the idea for this wonderful conference. What prompted you to go from running your company, or in addition to running your company, to starting a conference?
A short conversation with someone in the industry who'd rang me, and he works in recruitment in the metal sector. And what's great to hear is a lot of companies have been saying to him and his colleagues, whenever we're advertising a role with you, we want the applications to come in 50-50 gender split, because we really want to make sure that we're enhancing the team with more diversity, particularly with women joining the metal sector. And he rang me and just said, look, there's five-a-side football competitions, there's golf days, there's clay pigeon shooting, and I know women can do all of those things, but whenever you go, it's always men there. He said, can you do something for the women? And within 48 hours, I'd booked Park Regis Hotel in Birmingham, strong-armed through the aid of offering wine, 5 speakers, including Steph, who's here today. And we sold out. We had over 100 people in the room, men and women, predominantly women. And it was fantastic. The energy there was great. We've got senior women, we've got young women. And so we're back for a second year, even bigger.
Well, I just want to reinforce the fact that you're still running your company. I may have given the wrong impression with my first question. So you're still running running your company, but the conference this year is on a different level, isn't it?
Yes. So professional polishing services is still the day job and will always be the day job. Women with Metal is now a limited company. And the conference this year is at the International Convention Centre in Birmingham. And we're going to have a capacity of 300. We're already at 100 in sort of bums on seats. And it's July, and the conference isn't until the end of October. So it'd be great to sell out again. And yeah, it's quite scary. I just sort of gave my life savings to the ICC as a deposit. That was great.
There's nothing like a little bit of risk just to make your daily life a little bit more spicy. It's called, the theme of the conference is Fabricate the Future.
Yes.
Tell us how that phrase came about and actually what you're trying to say with it.
In 2023, our sort of theme was confidence, knowledge and connections. And we wanted every single delegate to go away with several of each. And I got caught on camera saying for 2024, I wanted to fabricate the future. So I'm stuck with it. It's, I have my best ideas under pressure, apparently. But what I mean by fabricate the future is we have an opportunity, or manufacturing, but particularly the metal sector, to really move forward with advancements that are being made in metallurgy and different grades of aluminium and stainless steel, different ways to process it, fabricate it. And we need to extend those opportunities into the team. And we need to do that by educating them, by expanding our teams. And we all know that it's so difficult to recruit people, that by actively looking at recruiting people who don't look like everybody else in the office and making them welcome, we're going to make a better working environment for everyone and for the business as we move forwards.
So I'm picking up 2 main threads there. One is inevitably the skills crisis in the manufacturing sector. Desperately need to widen our talent pool, absolutely understood. But also it's about helping women and the men they work together in a more fruitful, less barrier-oriented way. And perhaps I can move on now to Jeremy to discuss a little bit of that, because Kirsty's been talking about the men in the office and the fact that the men have their own thing. You are a proponent of what is called allyship. Can you perhaps describe for us what allyship is and how it plays a role in what Kirsty is doing with the Women with Metal conference?
Yeah, no problem, Nick. And it's great hearing what Kirsty's done, what she's achieved in just over 18 months. Allyship is effectively when you realise that you're not part of a disadvantaged group, but feel compelled to support that disadvantaged group. So you don't perhaps experience the barriers and hurdles that they do, but you think that with your privilege, with the opportunities you've had, you can support them. In simple terms, that's all this is. The critical thing with allyship is it's a verb, not a noun. You don't come in and announce yourself as an ally. What you do is you display certain behaviours that enabled you to support people who perhaps don't have the advantage you do. So, I think about allyship really represents the very best of humanity. Because if you're practicing allyship, then you're curious about the world. You have compassion for others. You have the courage to speak up and to kind of put yourself in vulnerable positions. You want to collaborate with others, and you're committed. Allyship isn't something you just do for a little bit of time. It's a lifetime journey. So I really try and encourage people from all spectrums to sort of lean into those behaviours, because they're just really inherently good human traits.
It sounds to me like emotional intelligence writ large, but focused very much on how we relate to other people in an open and sympathetic way, rather than defending our own little bits of turf and territory because maybe we're afraid. I don't know. What are the barriers to being a good ally?
Well, I think that there's a number of barriers, but I probably would sum it up with there's three main ones that I see. The first one is just apathy. People just think, well, this doesn't really concern me, so why should I bother? The next one is ignorance. People just don't understand the issues, the things that affect other people, because they just don't see it. It doesn't impact them. But one of the biggest ones I think that we need to overcome, and particularly this applies to gender allyship, but it applies to all other forms of allyship too, is fear. People are fearful of saying the wrong thing, making a mistake, actually realising they didn't know something, and then having to admit they were wrong for decades potentially. So I think ignorance, apathy and fear are perhaps the three broad areas that hold people back, but fear is probably the most pervasive one.
Well, we'll expand on that in a moment, but I'd like to bring Steph into the conversation. Steph, you very much work with psychology and leadership. Jeremy, of course, works with leadership as well, but you're very much more on the psychological front. Tell us what it is, why we have these barriers. Why do groups of men sort of stay, some groups of men, why do some groups of men sort of keep their barriers around themselves and make it difficult for anybody else, whether it's the woman or could be anybody from different color, different race, different gender, different ability? Why do people do that?
I think we have these intrinsic elements built into us where we need to keep ourselves safe. And this, of course, is an evolutionary response. We've been designed and we've grown into the incredible mammals that we are, incredibly clever. We can create things like, iPhones and motorways and Tesla cars. But essentially, there's part of us which is still very much wanting to just be safe and wanting to stay alive. And part of that is very much about thinking, who do I feel safe around? And it's built into us to like the look of people who look like us. So it's very much a subconscious, unconscious bias. A lot of people, as Jeremy's already alluded to, are not doing this on purpose or with intention. A lot of people just don't understand that that is a bias that they naturally hold within themselves. So exactly as Jeremy said, it really is about educating ourselves, thinking about those reasons that we might have. And I think being kind to ourselves, I don't think this is an assault on anyone. It certainly isn't in terms of gender, an assault on men. And, we talk about the systems that have created what we've got now. those systems are what holding everyone sort of a little bit hostage in terms of the way we're performing, because again, we know that businesses that recruit more diversely and that have more women and more different races and different backgrounds, different abilities on their boards, in their leadership teams, we know they do a lot better. They earn more money, they take better risks, they perform better in the marketplace, they outperform their competitors. We know, we've got all this data, but what we do need is that critical mass of that diversity. We need to include people in a better way, because what's happened with the systems that we've had previously is we've created a groupthink. So, and of course, we know in corporates hate groupthink, which is why they like to employ different businesses and consultants and get those different ideas. We need to get away from that groupthink. But of course, if everyone on your board looks exactly the same and has a very similar background, of course, you're not going to necessarily think that's exactly what we need to do. You're going to think, we've got great minds here, we're all intelligent people, we can outthink this. But thinking differently is a massive part of why we need that diversity in business, in society.
It strikes me, Steph, that this is about leadership, because this can't be a grassroots thing, or maybe it can be. Please disagree with me if I'm wrong. But to me, it seems like if your leaders don't think this way, then nobody else will. Or should I say, those entrenched behaviours, there's little chance that they'll be broken down.
I totally agree with that, Nick. And I think people can think differently, but can they have any impact in changing things? If the leadership don't support that, it's very unlikely. And again, all the research shows us that culture comes from the leadership. The leaders in our organisations and in our society, they are the people who set the tone and role model the things that you then find become the culture within that business or society. So we need those people to be understanding exactly what Jeremy's talking about and understanding the impact that they're having by maintaining this groupthink. And if I may share an analogy that I heard this year from a fantastic ally at a conference that was to do with International Women's Day, and they talked about a pie analogy. And of course, if you've always had all of the pie, you know, if you're that person who's sitting in those positions of power and you look the way you look and you sound the way you sound, of course you are thinking, I want the best people around me. And you don't realise that that pie is holding those people out. So by losing a little bit of that pie, so that, for example, women or people of colour or people of different abilities or backgrounds can take up a little bit of that pie, you've got to give some away. And of course, that can feel really uncomfortable. Again, coming back to that evolutionary responses that we have, we don't want to lose the territory that we've gained. So again, I'd pass it back to Jeremy to say, I think this is a big part of it, isn't it? People don't realise when you're in that position of privilege, you just think that's the norm. You know, they're not sitting there on a day-to-day basis going, aren't we privileged because we're here? They just go in, we got here because we're great at what we do, and they're right. But the system has not been set up for anyone else to have any pie.
I think that's a really interesting insight, Steph. And I think I often, in some of the work I do, whether I write about it or talk about it, say that this isn't a zero-sum game. And actually, the pie analogy only works to a point if you think the pie is finite. But of course, it's not. What history has shown is if you create opportunities for a different group of people, it just expands the opportunities for everyone. And you know, the idea that you have to give something away, also you might have to in the short term, but longer term, what you're going to get is everyone's going to benefit so much more. So it's not giving away a piece of pie; it's actually expanding the pie for everyone. And I think it's that fear that you have to give something away in order for someone else to gain that holds many, many people back.
Yeah, I think it's admitting that it's not working, isn't it? When actually for you it is working.
Yeah.
And I know that you welcomed men to come along to the conference last year, and very definitely you would like men to sign up this year. And because I think it would be entirely wrong to suggest this is a women-only conference. This is for everybody. Tell us how that works, Kirsty, and what kind of atmosphere, what kind of reception men are likely to get. Because I imagine, to use the word fear, I imagine some men are quite afraid of entering the lioness's den, if I can put it that way.
I had a conversation with Managing Director Rob Cooper of the British Stainless Steel Association. I sit on the board there. And he sort of said to me afterwards, he went, I didn't know I'd be the only man in the room. And I said, well, you weren't. But he said, well, it felt like it. And I actually said to him, Rob, if you ever told me in the 30 years I've known you, I'm going to be the only woman in the room. And he went, well, no. And I said, were you made to feel welcome? He went, yeah, completely. And I went, as long as you're made to feel welcome, that's what we want. We're not going to leave you sitting on your own. But the excitement from 100 plus women all being in a room where normally if there's 100 women in the room now, there's probably about 20, which is great, maybe 25, 30. But 30 years ago, there were literally 4 women in the room, and I can name them now. I can name who the other 3 would have been. So what we think men can get as a benefit from coming to the conference is learning about things that maybe they've wanted to ask but didn't feel confident. Because this year we're not having a topic on women's health. We did last year. But these things will come up in panel discussions and Q&As where somebody might talk about networking, for example, and how you can use that to your advantage to pursue your professional career. And then somebody might say, well, that's difficult because I work hybrid and I've got a young family. And then they'll talk about the limitations that being a primary carer at home can impact on their career. And all of these things, a lot of men don't know because they've not asked, because they've either not thought to ask, going back to Jeremy mentioning apathy, or they're scared to ask their colleagues, and we go back to fear. And I just think it's great to give women in the metal sector the majority in the room. We've never had it before. And just having one day a year to do that, it was one of the most thrilling things I've ever done, if I'm perfectly honest. It really was.
Well, that's astounding. Thank you. Jeremy, you're obviously going to be talking, and I imagine you'll get a lot of the men who are going to the conference listening to your presentation. To what extent does your own personal experience matter in this? Because I know that you've been on a personal journey towards your promotion of allyship. Tell us a little bit about that, and whether indeed that is how you'll try to get the message across.
Well, before I do that, Nikki, I just want to come back on a couple of things Kirsty said that really resonated. I mean, the first one is the fact that if you're a man that finds yourself in a room where it's majority women, it's like, welcome to women's world. It was just welcomes what it feels like. It's really good experience to understand what it feels like. Of course, the flip side is that typically men are made to feel very welcome. They don't experience microaggressions and sexism and things like that. But it's quite a good experience to be in a minority. And the other thing is that I've been to things like women in construction conferences and other things that was maybe at the start of my journey. I would listen to women speaking and see so many other women go, oh, that's great to hear that, because it's not just me. But I also felt men need to hear this stuff. They really need to hear what it's like, the lived experiences of women in the workplace, in a home and in society. So I think the more men that can come along, the better, I'll say. My own experience is, very briefly, Nick, that I spent 27 years in the corporate environments as a leader, and I led teams across the UK and Africa. And when I left in 2019, I genuinely thought I was one of the good guys. It's just, I thought I'd done the best I could for gender equity, and I'd really been a good supporter of a good gender balance for my team, and that's what I thought. And then in 2021, when Sarah Everard was killed, on the back of that, I read a couple of books just to help me understand the issue a little bit more. One was Everyday Sexism by Laura Bates, and the other one was Invisible Women by Caroline Ferrado Perez. And I suddenly realized I just didn't do nearly enough as a leader, because I just didn't know enough. I had no idea the scale of sexism that women experience on a daily basis, and just the data biases that impact women in ways that don't impact men in the world designed by men and for men. So it opened my eyes massively, and I read lots more books after that, spoke to hundreds of women. And now I feel that I'm flying less blind. I understand the world a little bit better. I'm learning every single day, but 51 years of my life, I didn't know. And that's okay. I just didn't know. But now I know better. I'm trying to do better. And that's why I try and encourage others to get educated, to speak to women, to listen to women, as Kirsty said, and just learn about what the world is really like for others. Because then that enables us to create greater equity and greater fairness that benefits us all.
But that takes an emotional and time investment. What do you tell men that the payoff is for them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think one is that I would absolutely say that I've never felt more comfortable with my masculinity than I do now. I feel very, very comfortable with it, more so than when I did when I was perhaps conforming to gender norms in a way that I thought I was expected to from a very early age. So that's one thing. I've learned a huge amount. I feel so much more educated about the world. I feel more at ease with the world. I've learned skills that I didn't really have before. My listening skills, whilst they still leave a lot to be desired, are massively better than they used to be. And it's just given me access to information that I never would have had before. It's given me a wider social network. And if I was still running an organization, there's no question in my mind that it would enable me to be a better leader. No question. Now, I think I'm able to have an influence in the work I'm doing now, but the benefits to men are many. And I think the other important point to make is that whilst there are many ways that gender inequities impact women, they impact men as well in different ways. Men not being able to express their feelings, not being able to express their emotions, men's mental health, fatherhood not being taken as seriously as motherhood. There are so many ways that by getting involved in gender equity and understanding it better, we can make the world better for men as well. We should all be in this together. So I think there's so many benefits to men of getting involved, and there's no downside. There's absolutely no downside.
Well, Steph, I just want to put a little stake in the ground here, because perhaps a man listening to this might think that everybody's ganging up on the male gender, and as if they're uniquely, lacking in emotional intelligence, etc., etc. But it's not just that. Society can be like that. It's women as well. I mean, everybody can learn these lessons.
It's the right question. I completely understand it in terms of what is the benefit for men, but also it hits me in the back of the throat a little bit, because women are 51% of our population. We were all born of a mother. We've all got grandmothers and mothers. A lot of us have got sisters and aunts and cousins and daughters. And and the idea that it would have to be beneficial for you as a man singularly to make you want to do something for all of, that will affect all of those relatives. I find it a little bit hard. And for me, that giving a bit of the pie away rather than making the pie bigger. Yeah.
Okay, no, I take that. I take that fully. I was actually talking specifically about the men who are going to be at the conference, in order to try and persuade. Not they don't need persuading by even being there. They're demonstrating a willingness to understand.
And thank you for that. But I think you're right. I think there are a lot of men out there who are going, what is the benefit to me? Why should I change the way I think about it? And I just massively applaud everything that Jeremy's just said there. And again, it's that, exactly as Jeremy said, he sees it as building a bigger pie. And I think that's what we need to encourage in that thinking. And to reinforce, it is not just about gender, it's about lots of different things as well, and about walking into that room and not feeling like the only person there. Because and again, coming back to the benefits to our society, to our businesses, if you want to make more money, get more people that look and sound and think differently to you in your business. That is a fact. That is a statistically proven fact. Your business will make more money, recruit better people, hold on to your employees, save money. I think, again, if you're a male leader, that is one of the benefits of knowing more about it, is your business will do better.
I completely understand why it must stick in the throat when men say, well, what's in it for me? I totally get that. The other thing I think must stick in the throat sometimes is when someone like me comes on and starts talking about this, and people go, oh, isn't it great a man's talking about this? And women are sitting there thinking, I've been saying this for decades. But that's part of the reality that we face. And so, but I think that the important thing is that, as you said, we can all benefit from this. But one of the things we're backing against is in the media. The media seeks to divide us, particularly social media. So a lot of the rhetoric in the media can be seen by many men as anti-male and anti-men, and I think it's really impacting certainly young boys and men who then been drawn into the manosphere in a way that is quite disturbing. And I think therefore it means the responsibility that we have is to be louder about the more positive narrative. And that's the work I'm trying to do, and Steph's trying to do, and I think through the conference, Kirsty's leading on. But we just have to be much louder about the fact, no, this isn't about men versus women. This is about us all working together to create a better world. But it also requires us to understand different people's emotions. Why do men feel the way they do? Why do women feel so frustrated? Understand that, have compassion for that, and then I think we can move on.
Yeah, I'm entirely conscious, and thank you, Steph, for sort of just flagging that, because I'm entirely conscious that somehow I've moved the conversation about what's in it for women to what's in it for men. But I've worked on the principle that the object of the exercise is to get men to start thinking differently. But let's go back to what's in it for the delegates, because Kirsty, you've got a fantastic array of speakers, including our good friends here. And I know that you want to send women delegates home with a little toolbox, if you like, of skills that they can learn from the speakers at the conference. Do you just want to go through the top 3 or 4 that you think will really benefit the delegates at the conference?
Yeah, of course. I mean, along with Jeremy and Steph, we've got 3 sessions that I think are going to be really beneficial to the delegates. We have 2 speakers from Quilter Cheviot who are doing a presentation on transforming women's financial futures. And they did a report last year showing that most people who invested were men. They weren't women. And when they actually spoke to their women clients, it was a case of, oh no, I don't get involved in that. My husband does that. And they were like, but you're in a senior corporate role. You're very intelligent. You're your own person. And there's still the assumption that if you're a cishet couple, that the man looks after the money. And when they went out to wider groups of women were like, oh no, we don't do anything with investing. We don't know anything about it. We don't know where to go. We don't know how to look into it. And they said, but even if it's only £5 a month, you can build a substantial pot of money if you invest clever. You can do it yourself. And that's giving you financial freedom for the future. So they're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be having Nikki Lowe come along as a speaker. And she specialises in teaching leaders how not to take work stress home. And I think because a lot of the delegates, if we look at last year, we've got young leaders coming through. We've got established business owners there. We've got managers who've been doing the job for a while. But this day and age, it's 24/7. Your email's on your phone. You can see your company's social media on your phone. And it's very easy to be sucked into working when you shouldn't be. And I know a lot of companies have, strict rules. Turn your phone off at 6 o'clock. Don't check emails when you're at home. And that's right. But that doesn't mean you're not thinking about it. And being able to sort of disengage when you get home, spend the evening doing a hobby, eating dinner, however you relax. When you go to work the next day, whatever the challenges are, you're going to be a lot more refreshed to be able to deal with them, to focus on them, if you've not been lying awake in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning stressing over them. So I think that's going to be a really, really important session. And the final example I'll give is Gemma Crampton. And she's doing a session called Selling for Success. And not everybody there is going to be a salesperson, but everybody in your professional career has to sell themselves. So when I was junior, I had to sell the fact that I could become a manager, I could become a director. Now I have to sell the fact if I want to become a non-exec on a board, why should they pay me? I have to sell the fact I've set up this new business and want to sell tickets for it. But when people are looking for a promotion, or if they're dealing with a supplier or a partner, or even their colleagues, as well as clients, it's how best to sell you as being the best person for whatever it is, whether it's a job, a product, a service. Because people buy from people, and being able to be the go-to person for that job, product or service means that you're going to be successful, which means you're going to have increased rewards. And who doesn't want that?
Well, I wonder a final piece of the toolbox, just to wrap this up, is also just helping women understand how to have a greater sense of resilience if they're working in a very minority position in a company full of men. That resilience is very important.
It is. And what I would say is those of us who've been in the industry a very long time have developed that almost through default. So what I would actually say is, for the younger generation coming through, we don't want them to have to develop that resilience, because we don't want them to go through the challenges that we've gone through.
I love what you've just said, Kirsty, and I agree. I think we all need to be resilient. And I suppose I have two thoughts on this. One is, this is that challenge, isn't it? We need to dismantle the systems that make people feel that they need to be more resilient. I suppose that's the first thing. So I think this is exactly what you're doing, Kirsty, with this conference. It's exactly what you're talking about, Jeremy. So I think that's fantastic. And I think the other thing, the thing that I focus on when I work with female leaders is, and all leaders, I do want to be clear, all leaders, is I want them to feel they can be more authentic. So, for example, my background is in transport, in oil and gas, very male-dominated industries. I was very much performing as if I was a man. I wasn't being treated like I was one, because, I was too emotional, whereas everyone else was passionate. But I want people to be able to come in and behave how they are, obviously professionally, but I want them to, resilient or not, to feel they can behave authentically and be the best version of themselves. That's how we're going to get away from that groupthink. That's how we're going to create that actual diversity of thought and diversity of innovation, etc. So absolutely agree. Let's dismantle those systems, and I think this conference is going a long way to do that, and will continue to do so.
There's a fabulous irony in that I'm going to ask a man to have the last word on the subject. Jeremy, purely by accident or conscious bias. Yeah. Jeremy, last thoughts from you.
Well, yeah, but I completely agree with what Kirsty and Steph says, because I think very often what we do is we think the answer to this is to try to fix the women, and it's not. Women don't need fixing. There's nothing wrong with women. It's the system that's broken. That's what we need to be focusing on. But I think building on the point about what people can get from this, I think what I found in my career, but I was very advantaged in many ways, is that just having a tribe of people around you who can support you. And very often, if you're a younger person moving into an industry, the things you can learn from people like Kirsty and Steph are just, they've all that lived experience they have. So get yourself a group of people that around you that can help you navigate your careers. Because I think it is your board of advisors at whatever point you are in your career. People are going to help you with knowledge and know-how and support and mentorship and sponsorship. I think that's one of the biggest things. And things like the Women in Metal conference are a great way to find some of those sponsors, mentors, and just critical friends who can help you in your career.
Well, I'm looking forward to being there. We're going to be up there for the conference. All the details are on the screen, the URL on the screen. Steph, Kirsty, Jeremy, thank you so much. I very much look forward to seeing you in Birmingham in October. It's going to be a great conference. And if this has excited you in any way at all, please do sign up, because I think it's going to be a fabulous occasion. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Nick.
The production line is produced by Manufacturing TV. If you'd like to suggest a story for the production line, maybe you'd like to be on it, or perhaps your company would like to sponsor the program, email info@ukmfgmedia.com, info@ukmfgmedia.com, or go to our website ukmfg.tv.